Good afternoon. It's my honor and privilege to welcome you to the weekly BW Education Wednesday Wisdom. Every week we bring stalwarts, thought leaders, doers, policymakers, and people who are really nurturing the talent for building the next level of India in the conversation. Today we genuinely have somebody who really doesn't need an introduction in India, definitely doesn't need an introduction in the education or the media world or the consulting world. He's seen it all, done it all, and I would say he's now padding up for his fifth innings, if not sixth or seventh. But let me welcome the Donald Bradman of education in India, Dr. Pramath Sinha. He doesn't really need an introduction, but Dr. Pramath Sinha, welcome to this BW Education.
Thank you.
Wisdom. He's the founder of Harappa Education, and we'll talk about how Harappa plans to change the scenario in terms of upskilling, skilling, training, and education, and prepare leaders from India who can lead various initiatives who can make a difference to India. Just as a background, Dr. Pramath Sinha has worked in McKinsey. He was the managing director of ABP. Then he set up the ISB, which is in a very short span of time become a global leader in education. It's definitely among the best in India, along with the top 4 IIMs. And ISB is a one-year course, and look at the quality of students ISB attracts. Dr. Pramath Sinha was instrumental in setting up the Ashoka University, and now he is leading Harappa. While he does that, he does many other things which are in the domain of leadership, education, and content. I was talking to him before this conversation started formally. There couldn't have been anybody better to build an Edutech company because he's worked in Edutech is about content and content delivery. And Dr. Pramath Sinha has worked in McKinsey. He was the managing director of ABP. He built 9.9 Media and acquired venerable media assets in it. And along the way has set up some iconic educational institutions and initiatives. So welcome, Dr. Pramath Sinha. I can talk about the women fellowships that you run. I can talk about the university you're setting up in Leh Ladakh, but I'll leave that to you. First of all, let me start by also welcoming my editorial colleague, Vasudha Mukherjee, who's been my co-pilot for the last 1 year plus in doing these conversations. Welcome, Vasudha. Dr. Sinha, let me start by asking you, how have been the last 18 months for you, both personally and professionally?
I think, firstly, thank you. It was a very generous introduction. And you could have stopped at Don Bradman. I've been called many things, but never by that venerable name. So that will be a cherished moment for me forever in my life, to be called Don Bradman. Whether deserving or not, I don't care. To be compared to Sir Don Bradman is quite something. But thank you, Annurag. See, like for all people, for everyone, this has been a mixed bag. I would say that I probably have had more benefits from being stuck at home than not. And I realize that I'm very lucky in doing so. Personally, well, I've lost 20 kilos. I think the lockdown brought in a discipline in personal life that I did not have earlier. I was running around, traveling all over the world. I took 150 flights in the previous 12 months before lockdown. And that had become the pattern of my life ever since I became a consultant in my late 20s. So not doing that crazy traveling has brought in tremendous discipline in my personal life, and I'm very grateful. And that has brought a permanent change, which I won't go back on. It was also very good that I got to spend home with my mother, who recently passed away. And though that was not due to COVID or Corona, I think Corona forced me to spend more time with my mom than I had ever done even when I was a child, I think. So that's been a big benefit. But yes, losing friends, seeing the suffering of close ones, the panic, the fear has not been pleasant. I think that will leave a scar for life. Personally, I did not get hit by the disease, but the fact that many people did who were close to me does leave me very shaken and fearful. Professionally, it's been an interesting time. I've actually been very productive professionally because being at home and being disciplined has allowed me to do many new things. I think I've cut out a lot of waste from my life, and because of that I've been focused on things that matter to me, whether in education, whether at Ashoka, ISB. We did a successful dean search at Ashoka all through the lockdown, which I led at ISB, which I led, and I'm amazed that we were able to do that all sitting at home and find a dean candidate that we are very excited about. So just as an example, but equally, I've been very excited with the progress of Harappa. Initially, in the first 2 months, we came to a standstill, and I'm sure you saw that in your businesses. In March and April of 2020, I used to joke that it was the first time ever in my life that I had zero revenues. I've never led a business.
I must tell you, Dr. Sinha, you were not the only one. April was the first month where a company like Maruti had zero sales.
Yeah.
So you can imagine the the scale at what business went down. So you're not the only one, definitely.
But I can also say that given that I am now dabbling in the Edutech world, I've really had an opportunity to grow the online learning piece, both at Harappa, at Ashoka, where we launched something called Ashoka X, which will now firmly become part of Ashoka going forward. And so for all those reasons, I'm very grateful and thankful that I've discovered a whole new, like you said, innings for me to build on. And that's been a great boon from the professional boon from the lockdown as well.
Absolutely. And Dr. Sinha, you've really done multiple things and done them well, both in terms of the integrity of what you built and the scale of what you built. Now, you've been an entrepreneur, you've been an institution builder, you are an academic, you are a philanthropist, you are a leader creator, you created many leaders. What is the role that excites you most? And would it be fair to say in Harappa, you're bringing all these eclectic roles into one role to build scale and differentiation and the impact that you wish to build?
Yes, Annurag, you've been actually very perceptive. Since you know me so well, I think you recognize this. So the answer is in your question. Without sounding too dramatic, I would say that Harappa is the culmination of my life's work. And everything that I have personally achieved and learned in life, I'm using Harappa as a platform to pass that on to everyone else. And what excites me most as I look back on my life and also the life of the people that have worked with me, the students that have gone to the institutions, is this idea, Annurag, that I'm firmly a believer in, that anyone can do anything. That anyone can do anything. Now, you may say that, this is a cute or sort of corny statement to make. It's a great one-liner, and of course, I am not for a minute suggesting that everyone can do everything or that anyone can do everything. For example, I can't do what you do and you can't do what I do. And of course, I'm not saying that anyone can do everything.
I understand.
But if you look at where you started, Annurag, and where you are today, if you look at where I started and where I am today, it would almost seem impossible that as a human being, one can achieve that. But it is possible. And I think it's not just you and me.
You're referring to the loss of my head. In my case, you're really referring to the loss of my head. I also never imagined I'd get there, but I have on a popular note. But go on, sir.
No. So you see that in everyone's life, and if we can give people that confidence, and not just the confidence, केवल dream और confidence से नहीं होता, you also need the ability. And I believe that you are not born with that ability. I believe you can learn that ability, that you can build that ability, you can build your capacity, you can actually improve your potential. In fact, the potential is there, but you have to discover it, and you have to uncover it, and you have to build your capability to see that potential for yourself. Often other people can see your potential, you can't. So Harappa is really about that, and that is what excites me, going back to your question. Right? When I'm building these institutions or these programs, or I'm doing Harappa, I'm really trying to get people to understand that, boss, you have amazing potential. And the only thing you need beyond your dreams and your aspirations and your drive and your ambition is capability. And other people are teaching you various capabilities, but the core capabilities that you need are these. And please believe me, even if you didn't have anything else, you will need these capabilities. So please learn these capabilities.
Absolutely.
And these are the capabilities I want to be able to get to people at scale.
Now, since you've given me a segue into asking, how is Harappa different from every other Edutech player? I know you don't like being called an Edutech player, though everyone else in the business wants to be an Edutech player, whether they are an education player or not. But tell us, what is the core differentiation of Harappa? What is Harappa focusing on, and how can it make difference in the way you say that you can achieve everything you want if you have these skills? So what are the skills that Harappa education is focusing on? And I would also like to know the story on why the name Harappa.
Okay, I think the two are connected. So those two questions can be answered through the same answer. See, fundamentally what I believe is that regardless of the sector you work in, regardless of the function in a company you work in, regardless of an industry you work in, regardless of the geography you work in, regardless of the specialization that you have as an engineer, as a chartered accountant, as a lawyer, as a doctor, as an architect, there is a set of core foundational skills that all of us need to succeed and to thrive in life. It doesn't matter that you started out as an engineer, or you started out as a historian, or you started out as a commerce major. You can achieve the same success in whatever you start out to do. And what is it that is common amongst all professions? What is it is common amongst anybody of any background? Those are the thrive skills. Now, what do I mean by these skills? We call them thrive skills because these are the skills that are foundational, they are core, they are unchanging, they are constant, they have not changed for centuries, and everybody needs these skills. And industry and the world today, even as we are talking about 21st century skills, the future also demands these skills. What I have done is chosen to categorize these skills in 5 areas. The first area is, how do you think when you see an unfamiliar situation and your brain kicks in and says, what do I make of this? How do I interpret it? What is the decision? No, how do you think? That set of skills is very important. I call these the skills of thinking, or the cognitive skills. Associated with that is that once you think, once you perceive, once you sense, once you gather the data, information, once you read the situation, how do you solve? How do you understand the problem, break it down, solve the problem, come up with answers, possible solutions, take decisions, and go out and do that? This is a set of skills which I call the solve skills, which are the problem-solving skills. Now, once you've got the situation understood and read, and once you've got the solution developed, you have to engage with people. Now you had the cognitive skills, now you need social skills to communicate with people, to engage with people. And these skills I break down into two groups: communication, which is what we are doing right now, and collaboration. If you and I were fighting in this conversation, we would not get anywhere. Even if we were communicating, if you were saying A and I was saying nay, and if I was saying black and you're saying white, there's not much conversation we would have. We are right now building on each other. I'm taking your points. I'm connecting to you. You are connecting to. There's collaboration going on to make this a great interview and a conversation for your listeners. So that's the fourth skill. And I'm saying these are all essential. In addition to this, you also need one very, very core of core skills, is to constantly grow and improve and enhance yourself as a person. The whole idea of self-awareness, self-actualization, self-improvement is the fifth skill, which is what I call leading, and leading yourself. Not leadership as in leading others, but leading yourself. Now, we've broken these categories down into 75 Thrive skills as of today. And I'm constantly enhancing the list of Thrive skills, right? And I don't want to get into the detail of that. But often people call these soft skills. These are not soft. These are very hard skills. Communication is a hard skill. It's not a soft skill. So that's the idea, is that these skills are evergreen. They are foundational. They are core. Everyone needs them, regardless of the industry, company, role, function that they work in. And it's essential that you pick these up. Now, our education system is not explicitly addressing this. Edutech industry is focused on the hard part of the skills, the technical part of the skills, the functional part of the skills. Everybody's teaching digital marketing. Everybody's teaching finance. Everybody's teaching Python. Everybody's teaching data analytics, data science, AI. And I'm saying, of course, you need to learn those things. Those are the things of the future. But where Harappa is different is that I'm only focused on this. And this is not just meant for engineers and managers, but it's meant for everybody. Teachers take a lot of our courses. Students take a lot of our courses. Lawyers take our courses. Housewives take our courses. So I think this kind of knowledge and capability and skills is required by everybody. Now that gets to the point about why Harappa. Harappa is also a foundational part of our civilization. This is where it all started. Harappa is also a time where there wasn't perhaps the same kind of technical formal education, but people had great thinking, problem solving, communication, collaboration skills. If you see the streets of Harappa, if you see the drainage system of Harappa, if you see the planning of Harappa, if you see the sanitary system of Harappa, they obviously had these capabilities. If you also see the fact that Harappan civilization never had any arms, they were obviously a very peace-loving people. They got along. There's also evidence that they had a very strong governance model. They were trading with people all over the world. So part of us is that Harappa to me symbolizes the time when these skills were in practice. They symbolized excellence. They symbolized foundations of our civilization. And finally, I like Harappa as a name. Sharasi and I chose Harappa as a name because it is essentially Indian. Our aspiration is that Harappa should be a global brand out of India. And I hope that we will make it. But when we make it, at least people will know that this is something that has its origins in the Indian subcontinent.
Thank you so much for beautifully elucidating the link between your name, the mission, and what you do. Let me go on to ask. Again, in Harappa, we're trying to address two kind of teachers. I'm simplifying. One is, students or in the higher learning, higher education, space, who are in college, need to polish up their skills of communication, negotiation, of comprehension, of written communication, and have those skills so that they can get the jobs and also excel at jobs. Secondly, you're also working with the HR heads and the L&D heads at large corporations in every sector so that professionals can be upskilled. or layers can be added to them, even when they may have worked for 8-10 years. So give a sense of how are you approaching both these differently?
So let's say that we focus on the campus, as we like to label that segment. There, the focus is on preparing students to crack placement, and at the next level, really present themselves best to companies, interviewers, to do their resumes well, to have a personal story, to be able to communicate well in interviews, and basically build a career, start building a career. So our focus there is on not just critical thinking or not just writing, but the outcome, which is get a great job, get a job that you really deserve, get a job that is much better than the job you would have gotten if you had not invested in building those skills. So that's our strategy there, and we run 2 programs. One, a very short program when the institution brings us in close to the time of graduation, and one, a slightly longer program where my belief is, listen, if I have a student for 4 years, you allow me to access your student for 4 years, and I can add that much more value to that student, because I have longer time with them. Some of these skills can really be built properly. The other interesting proposition on campus is a lot of campuses have actually asked us to train their faculty. So they're saying, hey, before you, of course, please help our students, but you know what, our faculty could also use this, because in fact, they could become more effective teachers. In fact, they have to deal with their students with empathy and with collaboration and to help develop and grow them. So please teach our faculty some of these skills also. So we also have now created a faculty excellence program. So that's how we go after the institutions. When you look at HR heads and L&D heads, as you pointed out, and enterprises or companies and institutions, there what we are targeting is people at different career stages, at career cusps. So the first is when people come in, right? They need to be trained and given some induction. So we have, for example, a young talent boot camp. That's for people who've just come into the organization, and what are the basic skills that they need? They may not need negotiation skills, but they certainly need speaking skills or collaboration skills. Then we have a first-time managers program. So the next cusp we target is now you from an individual contributor, you're now somebody who's contributing to the organization by managing a team. So that's when you again come in. Now that you've proven yourself as a manager, you are now going to be seen as a high potential for promotion and for a leadership role in the organization. So we have a high potential program. So what we do is we target people at key career cusps, key career promotions, if you want, transitions in the organization. That's one way we target people. The second is that we are targeting certain groups and cohorts. So like we have a women's leadership program. Vasudha and I were talking about it earlier, that we are very focused on saying, how do we get more women into the higher echelons of a company? Diversity and inclusion is a big part of everyone's agenda these days. We have a sales excellence program. In this, Annurag, you know that there's an evergreen problem. How do you train up people to build better pipeline, deal with customers better, sell better, but also deal with customer relationships better, and so on. So again, that's a big part. So what we are doing is we are trying to not sell skills, we are trying to solve people's pain points through our skills. And that's the approach we are taking. And part of the reason we are doing this is because I fundamentally believe that in the kind of education we are doing, we have to focus on the outcomes rather than inputs. It's not about my skills. It's not about the courses I have. It's about the outcomes you want. And based on what problem you want solved and the outcomes you want, I will configure my content and my courses to deliver that outcome. And that's again a unique proposition that we have at Harappa that may make us different from other edtech firms.
Yes, I fully agree with you that all of us need upskilling, and these issues are perennial in terms of adding these skills of better sales, better leadership, communication. And I think as a nation, we can do better. Americans do better than us because they're better at communication, better at presentation. So I think those are skills, if we did, it would do hugely to the quality of the workforce that we have, and it would have an impact on what we produce. Now, let me also, in Harappa, you kind of own your content. You create your own content. You create your customized content. Your content. Content is at the heart of what you deliver to either the campuses or the enterprises. Now, what is your content philosophy when it comes to doing the kind of content you're doing? Give us a glimpse into that.
So, I could have almost paid you to ask that question, but thank you. I think, in fact, again, I should have mentioned, but that is one big distinction about us relative to other edtech firms. We are not an aggregator of content. We are not a platform. We are our own institution, and therein lies the philosophy. You look at the great institutions, the learning, education institutions of the world, they own their content. They own the professors who create that content. Whether it's a ISB, whether it's a Ashoka, whether it is pick your favorite university. The real reputation, the real impact, the real outcome is driven by the fact that you create the content, and you create content that you can then create, design, deliver, massage, change, evolve, and constantly see what you need to do to deliver the best possible. So one of the big philosophies is we will do our own content. Of course, we will borrow from others if we have to, but I will retain control. I am not taking Annurag Batra's content and hosting it at Harappa just because it matches my skills. I am going to create my own content. And if I'm going to involve Annurag Batra, then he is going to fit into my overall architecture. So I've taken real control of what I have. And a little bit of this is, Annurag, driven by our own obsession with creating content in media companies, right? I mean, at the end of the day, we just become an aggregator with no content philosophy, with no slant, with no passion about and purpose behind what you do, then it's going to fall flat. In that sense, education and building institutions in education and in media are similar. The other philosophy is that, listen, I think the best thing about online, Annurag, and it is what people have to understand, that no student on your platform needs to get B grade quality. This is the only way you can, in fact, only deliver A grade quality. I mean, if you shouldn't deliver B grade quality. This whole problem that one university is grade A, one university is grade B, and a third university is grade C, or there's tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. Why is that? Because you are restricted by the faculty you have, or you are restricted by the number of seats you have, and therefore you are restricted to the student's quality that you get. Here, there is no restriction. I can bring any faculty and I can bring any student. So the democratization of education, not just in name, but democratization of high quality education. So if I'm doing a course on communication, I want people to know the best concepts. I want the child in Jalandhar to know Aristotle's appeals, because Aristotle's appeals are taught at Harvard and they are very powerful 3,500 years later. So what if he was a Greek guy? And Aristotle's appeals are relevant to the student in Jalandhar because it's as effective in that context as it is in the context of the most elite universities of the world. Now, therefore, our philosophy is we want to bring the best of concepts, the best of faculty to everyone. There's no pay premium and get the better. The last thing I will say is, therefore, we are relentless in our search for saying, what is the best concept, framework, content that I want to deliver? And what is the best way to deliver that online? Because I can tell you that the methods of teaching and learning online, they are just being born, they are just being created. And every day there is something new, there is something engaging, there is something fun. And so we are relentless in our pursuit of saying, what more can I give? How better can I engage? How better can I deliver the outcome through the online or digital medium? Because this is the birth of a great sector, a great way of teaching. I feel that this way of teaching is as fundamental a shift and disruption as the creation of the blackboard and the printing of books. And we have that kind of opportunity today to shape education. So it's with that philosophy also that we are approaching. But how do I get the best quality to the last student in the most innovative way to deliver outcomes? And I control that and not somebody else.
Thank you so much. Before I bring in Vasudha, my last two questions. First, as you rightly said, Edutech is just kind of evolving, if I may say. It's early days. Now, Edutech was supposed to be this huge democratizer, making sure everyone has access. Whereas in the early days of Edutech, during the lockdown, Edutech became it created a further divide between Edutech haves and Edutech have-nots. What do you have to say about the Edutech revolution in India? What is your commentary there? What is good about it? What is not good about it?
See, the good thing about it is, Annurag, that it has pushed the limits in a very positive way. People have quickly accepted it as a legitimate, effective medium that is here to stay. And I fundamentally believe that we couldn't have done greater service to the younger generation and to the cause of learning in this country. Because frankly, we have not been able to take the brick and mortar classroom and teacher to the last student in 75 years. We have no hope in hell of getting a classroom to those people in my lifetime. The only way you are going to get to those people is through technology. So we better start believing that this is a good thing, and that is also understand that while this may be the only thing, it's not necessarily a bad thing. So that's the first thing that it has done. However, most of the edutech in this country has not really addressed areas that are uncovered or that are gaps or people that are uncovered. We are still teaching children who are going to school or who are taking entrance tests or who are anxious about their marks in the 10th or the 12th. All we are doing right now through the majority of the large edtechs is feed on people's anxiety about outcomes. Feed on people's anxiety that they are not getting quality, and therefore let's supplement it with courses or content. I'm not naming brands, right? Or I can't get a job, so I need to address this. So today's edutech and today's edtech is largely feeding, if you will, of a transaction that is based on people's anxiety about their future. I think the real service in edtech will come when we say, listen, how do we address gaps? How do we solve for things that people should be getting but are not getting? And of course, it will help in outcomes. You obviously don't want to do education for education's sake, but where people deserve something better, where people need to know something better, people need to know history, people need to know Thrive skills, people need to know their math and language better. It's only when we start to bring that to people in the most effective, high quality, best quality, affordable way that you will truly feel the impact of edutech as you are talking about. That I don't think is happening yet.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sinha, for saying what you said. My last question. Two things have happened in the last 18 months. One is the acceleration in Edutech. Edutech existed for at least 3 years before that, if not 8-10 years. But the acceleration in Edutech and COVID. And the second thing that happened was the National Education Policy 2020. Now, these two will clearly make the education landscape a different landscape in the next few years, 5 years, 10 years. We have to look at it in a long-term way. Do you think an educational institution on the cloud is possible? A university on the cloud is possible? If you had to set up a university again, whether in Ashoka or an ISB, do you think Dr. Pramath Sinha would think of setting it up on the cloud, which I mean a completely virtual university? Do you think it's an idea whose time has come, or do you think I'm just hallucinating?
No, it's an idea whose time has come, and Harappa is trying to do that. Think of it as my first program. Ashoka University started with the Young India Fellowship. It was just one program for 3 years. Plaksha University has adopted the same. So think of the current set of skills that Harappa is offering as our first program. But this is the whole idea, that it is possible. And the university tomorrow will not be a university because it will offer degree programs, but it will offer non-degree programs. And so I do think that it is possible. I think the time has come. I'm helping the government build an online university right now, which is completely on the degree side, which is at the other end and more like what you're talking about, that you set up a university in the cloud. The People's University, set up by this guy called Shea Rashef in New York, is precisely that. What he has done is created a very affordable 4-year degree program, which is entirely online. And all his courses, all his programs are entirely online. So, absolutely possible. It is happening. In a way, the Coursera's and the edX of the world are that. They may not have the university name on it, but they are more aggregators. But will some people say, let them be the aggregators, I will be the online institution? Absolutely, it's going to happen. It's starting to happen and must happen. We in India need it much more than people in other parts of the world, especially like I said before, because we are not going to be able to take the brick and mortar to every child. So at least if you couldn't take the brick and mortar to every child, at least let's take the cloud classroom to it. That we have a hope of achieving.
Thank you so much. When it comes from you, who's built institutions who are successful, reputed, and parents and children want to be part of those institutions, you saying that a virtual university is possible. Harappa is the first step in making Harappa education that. I think it opens up a whole new era of possibilities. My supplementary or addendum question would be, if I were to talk to you 2-3 years from now, what would have changed about the educational ecosystem, and what would have Harappa achieved?
I think the educational ecosystem would have become much more blended and hybrid. And as a result of that, I would imagine that the overall quality of education as well as learning and outcomes would have gone up. Because it's possible to do that by blending in technology. It's using technology. It's not possible to improve quality very quickly with just human beings in the classroom, because how high quality PhDs and academics are able to find. So I do think that that's what I hope for education overall. And I hope that through Harappa, people will realize that there's a greater significance of these skills and that they really make a difference in outcomes. So you continue to learn mechanical engineering or digital marketing or Python or data science, but the outcomes would be even better, multifold better, if you are able to build the Harappa capabilities. And for all the people who want to change, who want to pivot, as the new name is, who want to shift, who want to get into a new orbit, who feel that they are performing under their potential, that they deserve better, I will hope that Harappa will be the go-to program, which will enable them to, like I started in saying in the beginning, do anything, that anyone should be able to do anything.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sinha, for enabling the careers and hence the lives of many young Indians. And I'm sure Harappa will be the leader in making sure these young professionals have the skills that are required for them to achieve whatever they wish to be. So with this, I'll hand over to my colleague Vasudha Mukherjee for the next set of questions. Vasudha, you and Dr. Pramath Sinha.
Thank you, Dr. Batra. And thank you, Mr. Sinha, for joining us today. It was so interesting listening to your conversation over there. I think I forgot most of the questions I had planned. Instead, hearing about you have such a strong personal philosophy that's driving you forward. This whole idea of creating accessibility to knowledge, to skilling for everyone. Can you tell me a little bit about your, educational and professional journey that kind of led to the creation of Harappa? Like where you started? I mean, I think it's always fun to hear those kinds of stories of how someone came to be where they are. So could you please share that story with us and our audience?
This could become a very long story, but I'll tell you some very quick vignettes and snapshots. The first is my journey at home. My father used to give me lots of errands when I was a child. And I was like the youngest of 4 children. I was the 4th, a boy after 3 girls. And I grew up in Patna. It was very traditional. I could have been a spoiled kid. But he would give me lots of tasks to do, even when I was very small. To give you an example, to go sell books because we had a publishing house, or to organize the meals at my sister's weddings when I was a teenager. And when I look back on it, I learned a lot from doing these things. And I now realize that learning to do, which is what you do in a classroom. In a classroom, you learn, and later you learn in anticipation of doing something with it, is as important as doing to learn. What his, tasks were helping me is to learn by doing, or do to learn. So I think learning by doing and doing to learn is as important as learning to do. That's one big philosophy that has shaped me. I went through school in a Jesuit school in Patna, and the emphasis on extracurricular activities outside of the classroom, I think, was really to build my Thrive skills. My ability to communicate, my ability to work with others, my ability to structure things, and so on. I think all came from that. So I think that at a young age is very important, and that has really helped me in life. I didn't realize it then, but I realize it now. Some of the negative things that happened to me, which I decided I would not do and would like to change, is what happened to me when I went to IIT. So based on my rank on my entrance test, I was forced to pick a subject. And that subject was something that I was completely not interested in. But once I picked it, I was stuck doing that for the next 4 years of my life. I felt that was a complete waste. I think education at the higher level is really about you figuring out through a process of exploration and discovery, what is it that you want to be, and how is it that you want to live your life. And you may choose something which you realize is not for you, but you should at least have the chance to move on to do something else. And I felt that our education system was too rigid, and I didn't want that to happen. I had a complete contrasting experience when I went to pursue my master's and PhD in the United States. I found almost unlimited freedom there to do what I wanted to do, under a set of rules and guidelines. So it was not completely unfettered. But it's like that idea that I was talking about earlier, that you could do anything. You couldn't do everything, but you could almost do anything. And I realized that my confidence just soared in that time. The same person who came out of IIT thinking, I was stupid, I was not bright, I was academically a failure, suddenly rediscovered a whole new confidence and a whole new capability in yourself, which then gave me confidence for life. So that kind of was my journey. And in that journey, I discovered when I got the chance to start building institutions later, I was able to pick from that journey things that had worked and things that had not worked. Because now I had been working long enough before I went back to institution building to be able to reflect on what were the things that really helped me succeed. Where were the gaps in my training and my education that I did not want children to have in the future? So thank you for asking that question. But some of those experiences and learning have driven the kind of programs.
Yeah. Sorry, I don't know if it's your connection or mine, but the last part got a little bit muffled. But no, thank you for sharing that too, because I always find it interesting when people like you who are creating or who are finding solutions. I want to hear about the journey because some of those things are still there, some of those problems are still there. I was definitely lucky when I was doing my bachelor's in Delhi here, Ambedkar University. They had us we had to do subjects outside of our major. We had to do subjects that's like other anything, and unfortunately because of our schedule, we were we didn't have as much freedom in choosing what we could. So I ended up taking a lot of history courses, and I have never loved history more. I had the best time with history, and I never enjoyed it in school, but in university it was one of my favorite subjects. And so I understand where you're coming from on that. Being able to have that access to do anything can really change your outlook on what you can do yourself and what you can create. And you were talking about communication being very, very important. And I actually would like to discuss that a little bit more because right now with the NAP 2020, they want to create education in more languages in technical universities, which is all good and great. But a lot of people also struggle with communication. It's not about necessarily learning a new language. People can have trouble communicating in their own language. And there are many, many different layers of communication. For example, how I communicate with you, how I communicate with my family, with my friends. It's all different. And some of these things need to be learned. Is this something maybe that you were referring to when you were talking about communication being important, or would you please expand on that?
Sure, Vasudha. I think that people assume that communication skills are fixed. Often they assume that you are either born with them or not. They assume that it has to do with whether you are an English speaker or a vernacular speaker, or whether you went to an English medium school or a vernacular school. You realize very quickly when you work outside India, most people don't speak English. And that most people actually don't communicate in your language. My mother tongue is actually Bhojpuri. Now, so this whole notion that English is required for you to be a great communicator is, as far as I am concerned, hogwash. Yes, you need to be able to understand other people when they're saying, but you need to understand only enough to be able to follow a Japanese speaking English or a German speaking English or a Portuguese speaker speaking English. Like you said, what people don't realize is that communication is actually about your command of the language, but much more than that, your command of your thinking. Because if your thinking is clear and structured and organized and simple, then you will be able to communicate it even in, if I could call it, broken English or wrong English or grammatically incorrect English or English with an accent or some combination of English and Japanese or Chinese or Portuguese or whatever else. And you and I have seen that. We have still able to impress you with their ideas and their thoughts. So I think impressing upon people that it's not just about learning language from a language speaking course, but also about reading and understand, developing your ability to process and analyze them, put them into a narrative, create a story, and then communicate is a core skill that in fact then influences all communication. The fact that you are able to listen actively and understand what somebody is saying is a very big aspect of communication, because often people, even with the gift of the gab, actually end up completely screwing up their communication because they are not actually answering the question they are being asked, or they are going off topic, or they are not, or ignoring what somebody is saying, even worse. So I think there's a lot more to communication. And it's, in fact, liberating to know that it's not just your English. It's not just the fact that you went to a Hindi medium school or a Tamil medium school, that you are going to be scarred for life, that you will never be able to communicate.
It's definitely one of the major things that are holding people back, because communication is so key to your development, holistic development, because to understand and to be understood is, of course, very important, personally, professionally, spiritually even, if we want to go that far. But I do want to ask you, because you are having this edtech company and you are talking about 5 skills, what do you think are, what would you say are the most important skills that you have found that you have needed to sort of teach and educate people in, other than communication, of course?
Yeah, let me see. I think a lot of our courses, I'll answer that question by reflecting on where is their demand from learners. So clearly, as you said, communication in terms of reading, in terms of writing, speaking, listening, building your presence, are all very much in demand. I think the next set of courses that we see as being in great demand are the courses around self-leadership and improving yourself, self-awareness, and focusing on how to become a better professional, a better leader, a better manager. So I think people are very keen to do that. People are very keen to understand themselves better and how to understand themselves better. I think the other bucket where people are very keen to learn is around the area of solving problems. The thinking and the systematic and a deliberate way of approaching problems, analyzing them, structuring the solution, developing a solution is a very big area as well. So I would say, yeah, those are some of the areas where people want more help, want more attention.
And thanks to platforms like yours, we are able to find it. And before we began, we were actually talking about your women leadership venture that you mentioned in the beginning. And actually, I did say that one of the first releases that I put up on education was from Harappa, and it was a online. It was not an online, sorry. It was a survey that you had conducted, and it was basically on like the personal growth of women and also leadership skills. And it was quite interesting because I think some of them showed 90% of women still hesitate to ask for a raise at work, and more than 90% believe that it's important to build network, but only 40-something% of them actually pursue opportunities. This is really interesting, survey to see that to see those kinds of numbers, and it's quite alarming. How are you guys, when you see a survey like this, when you conduct a survey like this, how do you go about, kind of tackling it?
You mean doing the survey or responding to the survey?
Responding.
Yeah, I think we use the survey. You can't obviously tackle the whole thing yourself.
Yeah.
Our purpose is to really create awareness, and part of creating awareness is to spread the messages, the key insights, but also the key to-dos that are coming out of these surveys with the right people. In this case, we communicated it far and wide to HR leaders, L&D leaders, saying that, hey, these are the kinds of things you want to do with your women professionals. And the other response we have is, therefore, then we created a program that caters to those pain points of the customer, if you will, if you use sort of more businessy language. And that's how the popularity of our women's leadership program, well, firstly, that's how our women's leadership program was born, because the survey informed what was it that our content would cater to, which gaps they would exist, which gaps we would meet and fill, and what outcomes we would deliver, right? And then, of course, go back and sell it to the same leaders who we had made them aware of. So that's the whole loop that we go through each time we do these. And these surveys and these findings really inform the kind of content, the kind of program that we create. And it also becomes the starting point, because then you go and you refine, you put something out there, and you see whether it's meeting the need, you assess your performance against what was asked for, and continuously improve what you put out there. So that's
never a dull moment for you.
Yes.
Always good. I did just look at the time, and we are kind of nearing the end of it. So I will actually just ask you one of my final questions, which was, you did mention in the beginning that this pandemic has been quite a eye-opener for you, as I can imagine it has been for several people across the globe. But what are some of the biggest lessons that we can take away from the pandemic?
Well, I think the biggest lesson for me are really three. Number one, there will be stuff that will disrupt you, which you never can plan for. And if anything, such things will happen. They will happen with some, and you should always know when these things are happening. Second, when these kinds of events happen in your life, which are totally unanticipated, remember that they are not only happening to you, but it's happening to everyone. You have no control over it. And you have to deal with it with certain grit and certain resilience and certain agility, so that it doesn't completely disrupt or interrupt or stop your life and stop you dead in your tracks. And the last lesson is that even in this cloud, there are silver linings. And it's important to not lose heart, but actually look for the positives, not in a way to deny the damage or the impact, but to really say, listen, there are things you can do that you couldn't do before. And let's take advantage of that, rather than being stuck like a deer in the headlights, and do something about this seeming negative disruption and get the best out of it and do something positive. So yeah, those are big lessons for me. That unanticipated disruptions, deal with resilience and agility and grit, and also remember that it's not about stopping the damage, but it's also about looking for positive opportunities that could in fact be things that you never imagined you could do, but you can do now and take advantage.
Thank you, Mr. Sinha, for coming on board here and sharing your journey with us and being so open and talking to us so freely on this platform. It's always a pleasure to have people who have so much experience and so much, wisdom to offer us, hence the name Wednesday Wisdom. And for the audience members who are watching, if there's anything you think you have missed and you would like to rewatch this, or you just want to rewatch it to listen to Mr. Sinha again, you can do so on all of our Businessworld social media platforms, on YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, all of them except for TikTok, which is not happening anytime soon. And actually, we will be back here again tomorrow from 4 to 5 p.m. with Mr. Sinha. And we're going to have some more panelists over here to talk about campus wisdom. So I do hope to see you all tomorrow too. Not really the same time, a little bit sooner. But thank you so much for joining us today. And thank you, Mrs. Sinha, for joining us here today. And I hope you have a great evening ahead of you. And I will see you again tomorrow.
Thanks a lot, Vasudha, and thanks a lot, Annurag, and I'll see you tomorrow. Thank you very much for this opportunity.